Hello and welcome back to my channel for the third and final part of my preview for the Halloween Apocalypse, this week's episode of Doctor Who, and of course the first instalment of Series 13/Flux. I've done two previous videos previewing this episode, taking a look first of all at the episode's synopsis and then at the episode's cast list, taking deep dives into both of those things and just seeing what secrets they might be holding really. And this video is going to bring all of that to a head, basically. It's going to be one last final prediction of what the plot of this episode might be, what it might entail, based on the trailer footage we've had, on the promo pics, on interviews, on all this information we've got about the episode, and just giving my best guess as to how it might all fit together. So let's start at the beginning. How is this episode going to begin? Well, there have been various theories going round. I think the most prominent one is that we're going to begin with the Doctor and Yaz on that green planet from the trailers, and that basically we're going to see them sort of imprisoned upside down and then escaping from their captors and then subsequently moving on to this adventure where they meet Dan. And yeah, I think that is going to be the first thing we see of the Doctor and Yaz, but whether that's going to be the very first thing we see in the episode is another matter. There's so much stuff going on in the episode, we know from the cast list and from the synopsis, that I wonder whether we're going to start off with a sort of preamble of sorts, some sort of prequel, like we've had in episodes like Resolution. We know from the synopsis that this story is going to take us to the Arctic Circle and to deep space and to Liverpool and wherever else. So maybe that's how it's going to start. And obviously the previous season opener, Spyfall Part 1, started in much the same way, so it would make sense for them to replicate that approach here. An alternate theory that I've seen some people suggest is that perhaps we'll start with one of our side characters, such as Joseph Williamson. Perhaps there'll be a little prequel scene set in the past that's going to set context for the tunnels and some stuff that's going to happen in the present subsequently. Perhaps we'll begin with the Weeping Angel scene with new character Claire, and we'll see her get sent back in time and then not see her again until episode 4 or whatever. It's anyone's guess really. We could start with any of these things. Of course, another obvious example would be to start with Dan, our new companion. And at one time I would have put good money on that happening, a few months ago, before we knew that episode 1 was going to be so jam-packed. If there wasn't so much going on, it could have been like Rose, the first episode of the revival, and we could have basically just been positioned with Dan and followed his story for a bit and followed him meeting the Doctor. But I think because there are so many other plates spinning here, perhaps we're not going to meet Dan straight away. Perhaps we're going to get some other scene-setting scenes first. It's worth taking a moment to think back to the previous season openers we've had as well, Spyfall Part 1 and The Woman Who Fell to Earth, both of which contain a huge twist at the end of the episode. In The Woman Who Fell to Earth, it's Grace's death, and then obviously in Spyfall Part 1, it's the return of the Master. And in both cases, that twist is foreshadowed in the very first moments of the episode. So in The Woman Who Fell to Earth, obviously, we begin with Ryan's tribute to Grace. We don't realise it's a tribute to Grace straight away. We think he's talking about the Doctor when he talks about the greatest woman he's ever met, etc. And then in Spyfall Part 1, the very first thing we hear is the first rendition of the new theme for the Master, the new leitmotif composed by Sagan Akinola. But again, we don't realise at the time that this is what we're hearing. We just think it's a funky, ominous, spooky little cue. So on the basis of those examples, I would suggest that we need to pay attention to the opening moments of the Halloween Apocalypse, whatever they may be. Though of course if we do get some sort of hint to a cliffhanger or to a twist, it's probably not going to be obvious to us straight away until we watch the episode back, knowing how it ends. Still, it's something to bear in mind and to pay particularly close attention to when you're watching the episode. So depending how the episode starts, and of course we don't know if we're going to get a pre-titles scene as we have done for some Chibnall era episodes in the past, not all of them by any stretch of the imagination. Of course that could be what this prequel scene I've just described might end up being, and then perhaps after the title sequence we'll move on to the Doctor and Yaz, or to Dan, or to Joseph Williamson, or to Diane Curtis, or to Rashenda Sandal's character, or just whoever, basically. All these characters, it really is anyone's guess as to what order all these things are going to come. But I think the long and short of it is that when we do end up meeting Dan, obviously we know he gets some trick-or-treaters knocking at his door. We've seen that in the preview clip, and I would suggest that comes fairly early on in the episode before he's met the Doctor and Yaz. I think from filming, we know that the Doctor and Yaz arrive in the TARDIS on Dan's road and sort of knock on a door, possibly on his door. And in one of the promo pics released, we see the Doctor knelt down on Dan's floor with the Sonic examining some strange square, some residue perhaps from something. What I think is going on here is that the Doctor, in her mission to track down Karvanista, for whatever reason that may be, she's ended up breaking into Dan's house and found this residue on the floor, and that residue is from the crate, which I'm going to suggest Dan gets taken away in and imprisoned in and transported to Karvanista's lair, which we're obviously very familiar with from the promo pics, and that's where the Doctor and Yaz meet Dan for the first time, rescuing him from Karvanista, who has presumably broken into Dan's house or something for whatever reason to capture him, again for whatever reason, and taken him back to his lair. And that would match up with the footage we've seen of Dan behind bars in a crate and in Karvanista's lair. And I think the size of that crate roughly would match up with this residue left on the floor of Dan's carpet, this sort of square shape. So I think it's fairly likely that the two things are connected somehow, that the crate has somehow left some residue and it was transported away or whatever. Another thing to mention is, where is Karvanista's lair? I think originally everybody thought it could be in space, it could be some sort of space station or spaceship. But one slightly outlandish theory I've come up with is that perhaps Karvanista's lair could be located not in space, but underneath Liverpool. It could tie into the whole thing with the Williamson tunnels. Perhaps it's part of that network of tunnels in some way. It has been pointed out to me that the real life tunnels don't look anything like Karvanista's lair, and so, okay, maybe it's not actually the tunnels themselves, but just some part of that network, or maybe, I don't know, Karvanista has built this space himself underneath Liverpool as a sort of offshoot of the tunnels, as his own creation, his own lair. Again, for whatever reason that may be, why would a furry dog alien want to reside underneath Liverpool? Not quite sure. But hey, it's Doctor Who, I'm sure they could come up with some explanation if they wanted to. Whatever the case, I think we're going to see the Doctor and Yaz rescue Dan from Karvanista. We're going to see the Doctor confront Karvanista about whatever beef she's got with him, whatever reason she's got for trying to track him down. And they're going to escape from Karvanista's lair, pursued by monsters along the way. I am going to place a bet that the shot we saw of the Cybermen in the second trailer is from this episode. I think the Cybermen are imprisoned on the ship, possibly alongside Dan and possibly alongside a whole host of other creatures as well. Perhaps that's what those two unexplained aliens on the cast list are, the ones with funny names. Perhaps they are also imprisoned alongside Dan and the Cybermen and whatever else. And there's one particular photo of the Doctor, I think it was an exclusive for Empire magazine, which shows her in a corridor, and behind her in this corridor there seem to be lots of sort of prison cells. Again, possibly tying into this idea that Karvanista is a bounty hunter of some sort and has imprisoned all these aliens and creatures. There is also a little theory I had about Karvanista working for someone else, a higher power, about him just being the henchman. I think in particular the photo of him wielding that axe-like spear sort of thing suggests that he's perhaps guarding something or someone, and that he's sort of a bit of a foot soldier rather than the main event. Of course, also the Sontarans fit into all of this in some way. That's something I've neglected to mention so far. God knows how that's going to work, frankly. I guess technically they could just be there for the cliffhanger leading into War of the Sontarans, the second instalment, and the Crimean War stuff. Equally, they could have a bigger role to play in this episode. It's just so hard to tell, frankly, at the moment, based on the information or the lack of that we've got. In terms of other stuff, we've got Dan's first TARDIS scene to look forward to as well, I guess, his bigger on the inside moment. And there are photos and clips of him inside the TARDIS with the Doctor and Yaz. Indeed, some of those photos look pretty explosive, with the TARDIS console sparking and exploding and stuff, which suggests that Dan's first TARDIS trip is going to be a bit of a bumpy ride. There's one pic of the three of them, the Doctor, Yaz and Dan, in the TARDIS looking out into the depths of space. It's not clear whether they're looking out at a planet or just empty space where a planet should be and perhaps has gone missing, but that would seem to be part of this sequence at some point as well. But beyond that, it's just not clear at all what else is going to happen in this story, where it's going to go, how it's going to end, if there are going to be surprise twists along the way. There is a scene from the Liverpool filming of Dan seemingly coming on board as a companion and joining the TARDIS and accepting this offer to travel with the Doctor and Yaz. And it would make sense for that to come somewhere near the end of this episode, I guess. But equally, that could come later in the series. We could have a Series 11 scenario on our hands, where the companion joins the Doctor and gets thrown into a few adventures, and then returns home at some point, and only becomes a fully fledged companion at that point. I mean, I think it's fair to assume that we're going to get a cliffhanger of some sort to lead into the next episode, War of the Sontarans. And that whole idea of ending the episode with a cliffhanger would seem to be at odds with that idea of ending the episode with that scene of Dan joining the TARDIS. You know, it would hardly be a cliffhanger for Dan to walk across the Royal Albert Dock towards the TARDIS, to step inside, and then for the TARDIS to dematerialise, and just to end the episode like that. That wouldn't be much of a cliffhanger. I think there's got to be a bit more to it than that. Of course, there's so much we don't know about this episode, and so many different, disparate elements to fit in. You've got Joseph Williamson cropping up at some point. You've got that character Claire, played by Annabelle Scholey, and of course the Weeping Angels as well, putting in an appearance, possibly a cameo, possibly something bigger. You've got possible Dan love interest Diane Curtis, who works at the Museum of Liverpool, and all those scenes that we saw them film all those months ago. You've got Rashenda Sandal's mysterious therapist character. How the heck is she going to fit into all this? And is there more to her than meets the eye? I think so. But equally, I don't want to end up with egg on my face, so I'm not going to commit to anything there. I'm just going to leave that one open. There's just so much going on in this opening instalment, it would seem, far more than we could even begin to comprehend. And to be honest, that's not exactly what this video has aimed to be. Yes, it's been a prediction of sorts, but I'm not saying any of this is 100% accurate by any means. It's just a bit of fun. I mean, if anything, I'm preparing to get all of these theories proven completely wrong. I would absolutely love for that to happen, to be completely proven wrong and shocked and surprised come the broadcast of the episode. But what do you think? Do you think any of my theories will stand the test of time? You might even be watching this after the episode has gone out, which should be an interesting experience for all of us, I think. But if you are watching it beforehand, be sure to let me know your last minute predictions and bets and guesses in the comments section below. And I really hope you enjoy the episode, and I'll see you after it, I'm sure, for some sort of reaction or review or whatever. But yeah, please like the video if you enjoyed it, please subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you very soon, I'm sure, for some more Doctor Who Series 13/Flux related content. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.